Welcome back. So this is going to be part 2 of the last lesson because it just didn't feel like it was going a little bit long and we need to separate it in a little bit. But just a review of the last lesson. We were talking about how you had this medieval way of thinking that transitions into this more modern way of thinking. And the beginning of that transition is a time period we call the Renaissance, or the rebirth of ancient Greek and Roman learning that has led into what we have today. And I know I rambled a little bit. I hope it made sense, but the basic idea is that all of a sudden, because of a lot of wealth coming in that led to a lot of education, like people having the time to want to be educated, and then people that wanted, cool things for themselves and things like that, and were willing to pay people just to learn how to get them for them, like a statue. That along with things like after the Black Death and the questioning of the power of the church, along with just becoming more educated, which usually leads to more questioning, you get this Renaissance mentality. And with this Renaissance mentality, we get 2 major, you could say, words or vocab words that come from it: humanism and individualism. Humanism being the idea of just that the human being human is important, and you should figure out more about what it means to be a human being. More focused both on basically the mental aspect and the physical aspect of being a human being, and that you hold more worth, and God wants you to have a good life. And I do mean to say that God wants you to have a good life. That doesn't mean that you have to believe in God, but that's the thought process from back then. And this is overall just called this individual idea, or individualism is the idea that you are important. You weren't just born as a serf to be some nobody. That even if you were born a serf, you were definitely someone, and you have a right to be someone type thing. So, we also talked about this. I'm not going to go into it a little bit here, but this is where we're going to get to now, is just explaining this mindset, this difference between medieval way of thinking and this Renaissance way of thinking through art. And this is usually why Renaissance it's the visual. Art is the visual of this transformation process into thinking. And so I'll try to point this out as we go on here. So, the picture you're seeing here is actually a picture I took when I was in Spain. This is in Mérida, Spain, and it's an old Roman amphitheater that was dug up. Like, it was covered over for a millennia, probably, who knows how long, and it was finally dug up. And I remember being here, and I'm not much into singing and things like that, but those are actually a bunch of my friends down there that go down there and they start kind of singing a song. And I was sitting pretty far up, and I could hear them just crystal clear. At the same time, I could hear their whispered conversations down there. Like, the Romans knew how to build an amphitheater. The Romans and Greeks, I should say, knew how to build amphitheaters without modern technology, like our sound systems and things like that, but still make it so that if you're at the top row, you can hear a whispered conversation down there on the I can't say the word, on the stage. And that was pretty cool. Like, there were a couple conversations, and I could actually make out distinct conversations down there. It was not that they knew that I was listening, but I was listening to what they were saying. More than not just the idea of listening to what they were talking about, but I was astounded that I could just hear them and make them out. So I found that pretty cool. It's just one of those. It's just an example of just how smart ancient Greeks and Romans were when it came to this stuff. And this stuff just kind of goes away during medieval times. You just lose a lot of this. So, and then when you get in medieval times, like, this isn't everyone, but it's more of this is a generalization I'm making right now, but there's so much focus on basically death and then the afterlife. Everybody will die, your life kind of sucks, and then you get to the afterlife, and then you hope you have a good afterlife. Heaven or hell type thing. And you do have medieval artwork, like I have 2 paintings here that's essentially from medieval times, different parts of, you could say, Europe or the Middle East. But you just get a lot of things that just kind of go down this route. Now, I would assume, and I would kind of hope that people that were in this time period, I'm pretty positive that, everybody had their little hopes and dreams in the world that they grew up in. But overall, this is kind of like permeated thought processes because of just how much religion was very into everybody's lives. But then you get paintings like this once the Renaissance comes about in the 14, 15, and 1600s. And all of a sudden you get this idea of like, well, my family is important. Not like people in Dark Ages didn't think that already, but now you have like the ability to demonstrate that and think like, this humanism, this humanistic aspect that we talked about in the last lesson. Here I am, I like my life, here is my son, a mother and mother-son type of situation. This is not like religious in any way. Usually paintings you deal with death and the afterlife of some sort, Jesus and stuff like that. All right, basically anything religious, but now you just have this idea of just the family, like this is important. Then the picture next to it, just, like whoever did this painting is trying to get the idea of like this is a snapshot in the day in life of just this one serving girl in whatever, like a tavern or a restaurant or maybe palace that she's working in at the moment. It's a focus on the idea of food and what she's holding. These are very humanistic things to be focused on, not so much religious. Yeah. And going back, again, I'm going to be doing this a lot again, just kind of going back and forth, medieval way of thought process, and we see it in art versus Renaissance. But there's a medieval painting showing, the three major estates or the three classes in life. I don't know if you see my pointer, but those who pray, those who fight or protect, and those who work. First estate, second estate, third estate. I don't think I taught that earlier, but that'll be coming up, especially when we get to the French Revolution in a future unit. But then you compare that painting, even just the artwork alone and what it's focused on, saying God wanted you to be born to one of these three areas. And then you get paintings like this where I'm going to go ahead a little bit. I'm not going to delve into this. Usually, if we were in class, we'd actually be looking at this and kind of delving into it a little bit more. But the simple idea is, like, in this painting, it's not necessarily what it seems, and it's one of those things where it just shows much better, how do you put this? Much more focus on not just making everybody look more realistic, but just what's going on in daily life. Sorry, I'm about to delve into this, but I'm going to hold back from doing so because I feel like it would just make things go way too long. I am not into art or painting myself that much. I'm not good at it, nor do I really like psychoanalyzing things and things like that. But this painting is one of those that it's fun to do it with. Let's put it that way. It's called Las Meninas by Velázquez, a Spanish painter. So, definitely medieval. This is actually pretty famous. This is a little. It's not the whole thing. There's actually a very small portion of what's called the Bayou Tapestry, characterizing the Battle of which battle? Battle of Hastings, I believe. I hope I'm getting that right now. Basically, when William the Conqueror took over England from Harold the Saxon. Although every time I look at this, I just feel like I'm looking at guys in pajamas riding horses. That's supposed to be chainmail. Knights on their horses type thing. But then you go to something like this, and it's much more down to earth. And just give you a little bit of the contrast here. And this painting is actually religious, but with something that was actually, you could say, seen as a little bit blasphemous at the time. So this is the Mother Mary with Jesus. But in most medieval paintings you see of Mary and Jesus, it's always this idea of like he's the Lord of the earth. He's the King of Kings. Mary and Jesus, they're usually sitting on a throne with angels around them and halos coming out of their heads. And this one shows Mary as just a simple woman that could be a serf, could be a peasant, and and how she loves her son. And this is a very humanistic way to view the Mother Mary and baby Jesus. And that's why I'm saying this is seen as a little bit blasphemous to say, like you're making God seem like, one of us. When it's viewed like, he's above everybody, you can't touch him, you can't reproach him, you need saints for that. But this resonates big time. In fact, in a lot of ways, you get a huge resurgence within Christianity with this viewpoint in place. We're like, wait a minute, Mother Mary was like me. Jesus grew up knowing kind of like my kind of downtrodden life. He understands me and things like that. And that actually, like that way of looking at Christianity in general, especially the life of Jesus, really it changed mindsets, let's put it that way. And it really had people looking at things differently that still persist into this day, especially within modern day Christianity. Again, another more Renaissance Byzantine style painting. This one is actually, I can't remember. This is 1200s, I believe, when this is painted. Don't quote me on that one. But then you go to something like this. There's a stark difference in just how not very well drawn that is, I guess you could say. I mean, that's much better than I could do. Yeah, I can't be knocking something I can't really do myself. So there was some skill there in medieval times. But holy cow. Holy cow, this really kind of puts it in its place. If you don't know what this painting is, it's called the School of Athens. Again, in class, I usually delve into this a little bit more and talk about this one because there's some cool, interesting facts about it, but I'm not going to do that here. I apologize. The main reason I'm showing those two paintings again is contrasting kind of medieval art styles and things like that versus Renaissance. This is much more lifelike, much more realistic, much more humanistic. Okay. Again, I think this is the last at least painters we're going to look at, and then we're going to look at two buildings. But again, this one I look at and I always just feel like someone was trying, still did better than I could, but it's just not that. That one, that's a painting and it looks like a photograph. It almost looks like her dress is like waving a bit. So, by the way, if I get this right, I could be wrong with this one, but I believe this. I don't even know who did this one, by the way. It shows you how much I really research into my Renaissance artists. Not my favorite thing to do, but I am, I shouldn't say, not my favorite area of history to really delve into is like the artistic stuff. But the contrast of just understanding medieval versus Renaissance really gives you an understanding of the time period and this transition from medieval way of thinking into Renaissance thinking. Now, what I was getting to a second ago is, again, I don't know who painted this. I probably should have looked that up. But I'm pretty dang sure this is Mother Mary again. So it's a religious painting, mainly because of the way she has her hand there. That's usually a sign of Mother Mary. But again, being much more dressed up, very humanistic. Much more lifelike. Like you could just reach out there and just touch her dress, kind of, and it would like move. Now, last thing we're going to look at is buildings. So I probably should have included one more picture in here, but I didn't because I had the other picture we looked at in the very first place, that Roman amphitheater. I could show something like the Roman Colosseum, or the Pantheon, or the Parthenon, or just a host of other just ruins that we have left today from the ancient Greeks and Romans. But with this church, this is a church that was actually built right after, you could say, the fall of Rome, around 500, 550 AD or so. It's built by the Visigoths in Spain. And this is not that great. I mean, let's put it this way. This is actually a photo I took, and when we got up there, I thought, like on the tour bus I was on at the time, when we got up there, I thought we were getting out to go to the bathroom. I thought this was an outhouse. Turns out it's this 1,500-year-old church. So I was like, oh, whoops. But it's also quite cool to me, just the idea of like, I understood what I was looking at. I've been looking at a lot of things like, in Merida, where they had that awesome amphitheater, to then come to this Visigothic church, where the skill of architecture is definitely lacking compared to the Greeks and Romans of just the same time period, just earlier. Like that's like I view this as one of those definite demonstrations of fall of civilization, you could say. Like they just kind of lose a couple things. But then over time, especially in the Renaissance, you start getting back to buildings like this. Now, I think we looked at this in our medieval unit. We looked at cathedrals were built, and they do build some pretty crazy, awesome buildings throughout medieval times. But in the Renaissance, it gets more crazy awesome, let's put it that way. And this is actually one of the first cathedrals, you could say, built off of this Renaissance mindset of this rebirth of ancient Greeks and Roman learning, especially with the big dome. And this is the I believe, Catholic Cathedral in Florence, Italy today. Built by a guy named Brunelleschi, who I hope I'm saying his name right, that we'll be talking about in a future lesson. But with that, I just wanted to use this time to go through these pictures to show you this, to distinguish this idea of just kind of medieval way of thinking versus new Renaissance, the beginning of modern way of thinking. And I hope I did it all right, just showing this idea of like, life kind of sucks. Hopefully I get to heaven type of thought process, and everybody's going to die. Just got to take what I get, to this thought process of, I'm important. God understands me. He wants me to have a good life type thing. And I feel like I should basically go out and earn it away. I need to learn more. I need to practice more. I need to strengthen myself more, both mentally and physically. So with that being said, I will see you in the next lesson.